Today's guest is Honor Boone. Honor talks about holding space for others, psilocybin and sobriety, as well as what it's been like for her to discover mushrooms on retreat in Jamaica and then move from California to Louisville, continuing self-expansion along with Sanctuary. In many ways, this community is not other than the experience and the minds which comprise it. So it's exciting when we get to re-understand Sanctuary as if for the first time, through the perspective of another, especially when it's through the words of one as perceptive and wise as Honor Boone is. And in this conversation, you'll begin to get a taste of how deep a compliment is her presence to what is unfolding here. You're listening to Psilocybin Says. To support it, join the conversation in the YouTube comments. Subscribe on YouTube and podcasts, and stay connected on Instagram and TikTok. And now, please welcome Honor Boone.
Well, hey, Honor. Thanks for being back on Psilocybin Says. It's been about a year or so since you were on.
Probably. Yeah, I'm not sure, but thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
You're looking good, looking fresh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you feeling maybe a little less overwhelmed? Are you working? 'Cause you seem more at ease, or maybe it's just the mushrooms.
That's probably it. Actually, yeah, I'm sure that's part of it. But yeah, I mean, I feel good. I feel less overwhelmed. I'm in a better spot, I think, than I probably was at that time.
Well, I mean, that was a big part of your, if I recall, kind of one of the big takeaways is that you saying something like, you don't have to work so much. You don't have to try so hard or something like that. Can you just kind of take us back to, because we talked last time, I think we talked after your experience that Christina and I, or Athena and I sat with. And you've done some work since then. So just kind of take us back. For those of you who don't know, Honor has been on our show before, as Courtney just said, but Honor has also been a part of our work starting in Jamaica back in, 2019?
2019 February.
2019, and you have a really interesting and compelling story that I think a lot of people can identify with. So just kind of bring our audience up to speed on kind of the trajectory of your working with this sacrament since, let's just say, that session that you and I and Athena did, the first one for Sanctuary. Actually, it's so awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great experience. I mean. Do you mind if I just start briefly with Jamaica?
Oh, yeah, sure. If you want to come in back there, sure.
Yeah. I mean,
I just didn't want to ask too much of you to go back through.
No, that's fine. It's one of my favorite stories. So, anyway, I had come across the information about the Johns Hopkins studies, psilocybin. I don't think I'd even heard of Michael Pollan's book yet. I didn't know that it was out even, and I was looking for a different way to deal with depression, because I had been taking antidepressants for about 25 years, and it seemed like a more natural way to maybe help my depression. So I quit after talking to you, I think on an introductory call. I stopped taking my antidepressants and I went to Jamaica, and secretly hoping that I would also have one of these grand spiritual experiences that I had read about. And so, first dose, really not much to tell, but the second dose, I think I took 7 grams and had a very, very challenging experience that mostly revolved around my sobriety. So I should mention that I had been a recovering alcoholic for about 30 years, maybe at that time, and didn't, sort of in accordance with the traditions of being in a 12-step program, didn't take any kind of recreational drugs. I had occasionally used, something like marijuana for nausea, because for me it's the only thing that works. And to me psilocybin was a medicine. When I went down there, I was going to get some medicine, and what happened during that dose was that a voice in my head told me that I wasn't sober anymore, and it just shook me to my core. I fell apart. It was like probably one of the most difficult experiences I had ever. And I remember sitting with you, Eric, on the grass and trying to just get through it, and joking in sort of a dark way about, where's the stuff I read in the brochure, joking like my spiritual experience, and you helping me through that, and giving me words of wisdom about leaning in, and if you knew, long term what would be at the end of this for you, you would lean in, and the benefits don't happen in the moment. And to me it sounded kind of hollow, I think, at the time. And I remember getting really angry and saying, I can't believe I paid for this. And, anyway.
This fucking joker has no idea.
But yeah. And I think I felt bad afterwards, because I felt like you guys sort of took that to heart, like somehow, but it was just me sort of venting in the moment. And, long story short, I came out of that with that experience in Jamaica with some huge benefits, because I realized that after, being able to integrate that, I guess, experience, realizing that that sobriety is not sort of a one size fits all. That there's no real benefit in being judgmental with yourself, I guess, or with others about what their sobriety looks like. And that, as long as I wasn't drinking, which was my problem, that, I still considered myself sober at that point. So we moved to Louisville. And I say coincidences if you believe in coincidences, which I don't. You all relocated back home here to Louisville. And so the church, which I'm not sure I even would have gotten involved with Sanctuary if I had been back in L.A. But being here in Louisville and having a history with you guys and feeling like I had unfinished business with psilocybin. Where's my spiritual experience? Thank you very much. I signed up, became a member, and we had a private sacrament at my house, which was a phenomenal experience. It was challenging in that it just takes, I don't know, it's, I don't do like rainbows and unicorns but so it was challenging, but I had this phenomenal flow of messages, wisdom, and part of that was rest, and but it was a phenomenal experience. I believe I was communicating with the source or God or whatever you want to call it. And by the way, why do people, when you say something like that, like why do people kind of go like, okay. Like, I feel like if someone tells me that they're talking, if someone were to tell me that they're talking to God, I'd want to say like, well, what did God say? Like, tell me more.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so I find that kind of odd, but anyway.
You're right.
I know, like,
I mean, why aren't people more curious?
Yes.
You mean?
I mean,
general?
no one has ever.
Yeah.
I've told that to a handful of people, and no one has ever said like, "Tell me more." Like, what else?
Right.
What else did God say? Or, So anyway, nothing crazy. So.
Nothing crazy, just talking to God.
No. I mean, it wasn't like, like if someone tells me they're talking to God, I'm gonna ask at least once, like, what did you hear? Mm-hmm. Because I think based on maybe the first, maybe one or two things that they tell me, I can make a judgment about whether, I want to hear more. I think that what they have to say is of any value, because it's either going to jive with my ideas about the creator of the universe, or it's not, So like if someone tells me that, anyone who doesn't support Trump in the next election is going to burn in hell, then I don't want to hear any more about what your experiences. But if it's something about, love and forgiveness or whatever, then that's going to jive with my ideas about God, and then I want to hear more. So anyway, we had a great experience, and then I don't even know how much longer it was. It was the retreat. I did the camping retreat. What was that?
That was August 2020. That was last year, August 2022. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that was another fantastic experience. Did a moderate dose and had the same experience of receiving, like I said, just a conversation with God. Again, difficult. It took everything out of me. I mean, physically, and I had great caretakers, including Courtney, and then most recently, I had I dosed with as a member of Sanctuary with friends and family ministers, correct? From Sanctuary, people that I knew locally here in Louisville through the church, and people I respect a lot, and that I knew would hold space for me and do a great job, and I was in good hands. And that was once again a really phenomenal experience.
What were some of your takeaways from that? I haven't heard much. I mean, we talked a little bit, but
yeah, more really good information. I mean, I took a lower dose because of, I know Eric and I'm sure Courtney, you've sat with like hundreds, if not thousands of people and held space. But the people I was working with, again, great respect for them and believed sincerely that they would take good care of me, but I didn't want to put myself or them in a difficult position by taking a very, very high dose. So I did a relatively, like a small, I don't know if you call it small, but probably between 2 and 3 grams. And so it was at least, I know you say it can vary, it's not very predictable, but it was a more subtle experience. It was, I'll say initially that my first thought, and I told you this, was I took enough to get the geometric patterns, but I was afraid I wasn't going to have the effect that I want to have what I feel is like a reset. There's a philosopher, Alan Watts, I think, that talks about psychedelic experiences as an unlearning. And that sort of jives with what they talk about as the reset of the brain, and I think there can be an unlearning of or a shedding of bad habits and unhealthy behaviors. And I also, who doesn't want to talk to God, I guess. So, but that was one of my first messages was like, not everything has to be Disneyland and talking to God. And that made perfect sense to me. I thought it was very funny at the time because my happy place in LA was Disneyland. And that's because when you're in Disneyland, have you ever been to a
Disney World?
Disney World? Yeah. Okay, so it's more than roller coasters. It's a completely immersive experience. So there's no room in your brain while you're there for much of anything else. It's a place to sort of, you can get away from everything, and it's hard for other thoughts or things to intrude in your head. So I spent time there when I could. And it was the same with those other trips we were talking about where, God was taking up all my attention, and the words were very like, I can remember verbatim what I heard. It was very powerful messages, no room for any other thoughts. This was much more subtle. My own thoughts were intruding a bit. But that was part of the lesson that day. It was that, God is in the small things. In order to, sometimes you need to, it's what you focus on that, if you're looking for God or joy or love, it depends on what you focus on. I said, well, I never felt very equipped for life. And the message back was, just, it depends on what you focus on. Then, I'm trying to remember now, there were some things about my relationship with my husband. There was, the big takeaway was, I'll say two big takeaways. One was that there is no separation. That was a message to me, which is something that I believe you hear a lot from people, that the feeling of connectedness or the lack of separation. There's no such thing as separation. The feeling of separation is an illusion, and all unhappiness comes from the feeling of separation. If you, and everything we do, part of that was everything we do either makes people feel closer to God or further away from God. And then the last thing that really blew my mind was really fascinating stuff to me. The idea that there was a thunderstorm. And I was, one of my sitters had a dog who was sitting next to me under the gazebo. And when I heard the thunder, I reached over to put my hand on him to reassure him in case he was scared of the thunder. And I heard that, I heard in my head, I am the thunder. And the idea there, again, it wasn't this strong verbatim word for word quote that I can tell you, but the idea was that if we're all connected and God is we're all part of God and God is part of us, then the things that God is in the things that you're afraid of. If God is in everything, then God is in the things that you're afraid of. And what that means is, in the end, ultimately, you are never not safe. If God is the source of everything, then all the things that pose a risk to you or the things that you're afraid of, ultimately there's nothing to be afraid of in those things. I know that's easy to say, but it makes sense if you think about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
How has that started to incorporate or integrate into your life, that perspective? Or are you able to tap into that, throughout the day when you maybe experience perceived threats or whatnot?
Yeah, I think so. I need to, you know how it is. You drift away from that stuff. I need to go back and I read my journal from time to time just to look at the things I wrote down. But I believe so. I think I spent a lot of time in the last few years trying to control everything. Everything from, everything around work, around my husband's medical stuff, around, just thinking that, if I can sort of control all these things, nothing bad is going to happen. And I think I've been able to let go of some of everything from some of the guilt the feelings of guilt for the things that I feel like I used to maybe feel were my responsibility, that things I didn't do or didn't do successfully or whatever, to just feeling that, having more trust in the process. Oh, yeah, that was part of it too, was about the good guys and the bad guys. That was a message I said during that conversation. I said it, but it's fun to play good guys and bad guys. That has always appealed to me for some reason, like it's why I love like Star Wars, or, I want to be on the white, I want to be the white hat, and one of the good guys. And the response to that was, that makes you feel, what was it? That makes you feel safe when you think, gosh, I'd have to look it up now, but it was something like that. Like, that's what makes you feel safe when you think you're not safe. Just being one of the good guys, it helps you to feel safe when you think that maybe you're not safe. So anyway, so yeah, I'm trying to, I think.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much there. And like you said, it's easier said than done. I think basically said that, but this being in community, like with Sanctuary, like you also mentioned, the stuff slips away, like it starts to slip away, all these lessons, and that we gain with the mushroom. And just like sitting here with you, hearing you retell those things, I feel myself waking up, like from, this morning running around like, rah, like gotta do this, gotta do that, caught up in the logistics of being on earth.
Yeah, right.
And then, I hear you share about your mushroom experience and I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Like this is kind of like an eternal thing where we're all in it together. And okay, yeah, the good guys are the bad guys. The bad guys are the good guys. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. It's so interesting how we are reminding each other of
that's
these things.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is one of the benefits of having the community. Is I not only have access to people and events and that can help me integrate these experiences, but I think you're right. We also benefit when I hear someone else discuss their experiences or what they've learned since their experiences. That helps me. I like to think I don't have to be hit over the head. I can learn something from you telling me about your experience.
Yeah.
Well, you offer a unique perspective, particularly in terms of the work that we've been doing over the years. It didn't really register until you kind of mentioned what you just did. But I wonder if you have any ability to kind of compare the integration and the personal development that you experienced after your work in Jamaica and then going back into your home environment in California, as opposed to this work that you're doing now in the context of an active community. Do you feel like you're seeing more benefit realized from community?
No question. By far, it's night and day. I appreciate what you were able to give me in Jamaica. It started me on this path. It was really the beginning of an amazing journey and a great experience, even if I didn't appreciate it so much at the time. I told Courtney too. Like, I remember sitting on the grass next to you, and can I say a bad word or?
Yeah.
Here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember telling Eric in Jamaica, like, psilocybin is not for pussies. And I told Courtney I was going to make a T-shirt that said that.
That's right.
Right? So anyway, what were you talking about? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, definitely. When I went back to L.A., I was lost, and I think you you know that. I got in touch with you a couple times. Like, I don't really know, should I do this? Should I find another, somebody here who can, a therapist? Like, what, should I come back to Jamaica? And I think you were helpful, but definitely communicating with me was helpful. And we did have a thread on WhatsApp, I think, with the people from the group, and we were able to support each other. I was able to find through Meetup, maybe the app, a group locally that met once a month and time. But with the church community, especially being located here in Louisville, I know there are members from around the world, and for some of them, it's maybe not easy to get together physically. But here in Louisville, but they can get together on Zoom. There's a lot of meetings. I understand that. But here in Louisville, it's sort of on another level because, we can physically get together with each other. I've met some of the other members socially. We meet. We have the weekly at where we meet at another local church. The services online. I know. I've said this before. I know that if nothing else, if I'm in a bad spot or maybe I'm struggling with something, whether or not it's connected to, my last, sacrament experience, I can literally send a message on Discord or pick up the phone, and even someone I've never met before would respond to me and be there for me. There's no doubt in my mind that that's the case, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we hope Sanctuary becomes everywhere, that there's members, like as people go through the ordination programs and start to build their community locally. Like, that's really the vision, that there's this home base touch point for people all over the country, because there is nothing like in person. There's nothing like that experience. Not to say the benefits of meeting virtually aren't great. They're so great, but being in person is really where it's at. I want to hear more about some of your experiences holding space yourself, because you've gone through our cleric training program, and
Right.
You're a myself minister, and you've had some experiences holding space for people.
Right.
So let's.
Well,
hear
I'm
about
only
those.
laughing just because, I did hold space at a group retreat, and I told Eric, my perspective has changed a bit. I used to do security work, and at the time it sort of felt like the most boring security job I'd ever had, just because it was quiet. And, I was there to make sure everything was okay. But I don't think at that time, now this was before my friends and family, like minister training also. So I don't think I realized the importance of the importance of the role, but also that it should have been an honor for me to hold space for these people, to be in that role and care for them. And then I did also held space at another private sacrament with Eric, and that was very different, as the church member that we were with was more active and more verbal. There was more going on, and yet I was able to take a cue from Eric, so I felt like very comfortable. Like, I knew he wasn't going to let me do anything that wasn't okay, so I just took my cue from him, and it's funny because she has since told me how I want to say what it meant to her to have me there. I felt like I did nothing except sort of, again, take my cue from Eric, comfort her when he felt it was okay to comfort her, or even to touch, just briefly or interact at all. But it meant a lot to her. And she's actually, and again, we were talking about this before, but this is actually how you have you all have set up this to work, so that having been through the minister program, I was able to also participate when I dosed myself, to have another friend, two other friends and family ministers from the church who held space for me, and were gifted. I was gifted sacrament through the church, and so we were able to come together as part of the community and actually make this happen without, making a formal, attending a formal event by the church, paying money. It was exactly, I think, what you foresaw when you were putting this together.
Eric wants people to take mushrooms for free. It's true. I really do. We do. No, there's definitely value there, and I'm not saying that facilitators shouldn't get compensated. But particularly as we're learning this work and we're just coming into it, it's always an incredible honor to be there for someone's transformation, even if it is almost not recognizable, almost if you don't see a transformation. Even that experience that you had in Jamaica where you were, miserable and, blaming me and the mushrooms. It was really, sincerely, it was a very special experience to be a part of.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay.
Just side note, a recent episode that I recorded with Kristen, who was one of the clerics at the camping retreat that you were at, where you had a mushroom communion. She shared on that episode that during the integration circle, where she was just there as a cleric, she hadn't had any mushrooms the whole retreat, that she had a download, like as a cleric, to bring a child into the world.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Wow. In that integration circle that you were a part of, just being there, being present, and feeling the energy of everyone there. And she had a massive shift herself that led to her having the baby that she just had like a month ago. Wow. Yeah. And so you were a part of that. You helped bring a child into the world. Just wanted to let you know.
Thank you
so that you're
so
aware.
much.
It's very real, though, that the being in that healing space just opens up and allows for even the support people to get so much out of it. And I guess just what I wanted to say is that how this relates to kind of our history of working with these medicines, these sacraments. Joe Tafur, who's a medical doctor, an ayahuasquero, and published author, very well respected, very well renowned in the psychedelic world. He was here giving a talk a few weeks ago, and in the talk he was talking about, facilitators getting paid and how, it's accessibility is an issue and how understandably, people need to get paid for their time. And so, it costs $1,000, $1,500 or whatever for a session and blah, 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 blah. He said, but, for thousands of years, people have been taking ayahuasca for free. For thousands of years, people have been taking iboga for free. For thousands of years, psilocybin for free. And so there is a way that we can make this work where it is more accessible, and people still can receive a living wage for work that they do within these communities. And also, I don't want to say it, but just acknowledging what a gift it is to be able to hold space for people and for our good work to be its own reward. So I love that we're moving more in that direction. And I love that just like you, particularly, I say this and I mean it, I've said it before, I'll continue to say it, how special your experience in my work in particular has been, because even right now you are illustrating and embodying everything that we have been trying to put into place, not just with Sanctuary, but as that has evolved from Jamaica to now. So it's really incredible.
Yeah, it's been a ride, man. I mean, I wouldn't have imagined, when I got on the plane to go to Jamaica, that I would end up here. But it's one of the best things in my life. And as far as growth, it's been, I mean, I fought it kicking and screaming in the beginning, as happens. But, I'm sort of riding the wave now, navigating a little bit better. And by the way, I do agree with the idea that, sitters should be paid. I offered to pay my sitters, but we are fortunate in being in a situation, at least some of us here locally, where we can also return the service, have the opportunity to, hold space for other people, that have held space for us, which is great because, it means that we can, that can be available to us more frequently.
I just actually today scheduled, I haven't told you the date or anything, but I'm scheduling to sit with one of your sitters' spouses, but for free. Like and this is the most excited I've been about actually sitting for a long time, that I get to now do this not as like an obligation, but out of desire, and I can completely extract money from the situation. I fucking love that so much.
Yeah, I'd like to do more of that as well in future. I think I'd like to learn how to, because I still have problems sitting still, and not, I think I'd like to learn to be a better sitter through experience. I mean, I've had the training now. Now I just need more experience. So
well, that's what all of us need. That's what everybody needs in terms of training. We can do all the book studying. We're going to have all the conversations we want to, but the words only go so far. It's actually getting in there and experiencing. I guess that, leads me to ask, what do you think, what do you feel like you've learned from being on both sides of this fence, and how would you take that into kind of a next scenario in holding space for somebody else? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, a new appreciation, I think, for the sitters. First of all, the one of the sitters I had, can I mention a first name anyway?
Yeah, no, they're fine.
Yeah, Christina. She just basically, by example, taught me what a phenomenal sitter is like. I mean, and obviously, you're a phenomenal sitter as well, but just she and I have another connection outside of this that made it special, and I think by watching her, I realized that it was a sacred thing, that she took a responsibility, or not even a responsibility, but a role that she took very seriously, and it made my experience so great. So I think I would like to be that person for the next person I sit for. Would like to be the person who's not just there to keep them from getting in their car and driving away, but the person who is, putting creating a positive space and a loving space, and just helping them hopefully to get whatever they need from the experience, and not interfere while not interfering with the experience itself.
So you mentioned having a connection with Christina, like outside of that service.
Right.
So could you talk a little bit more about that? Like how that relationship has evolved or shifted since you've had that experience? I mean, again, I get a little uncomfortable talking about other people, so you will stop me if I say anything.
Christina's, she's very upfront about her work with Sanctuary.
Okay.
The Psilocybin Sobriety is
Right.
a public event now.
Okay.
It's open to the public.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. So it's all fair game.
Okay. Well, Christina and I both have a history in recovery and 12-step, and but our experiences were very different. I got sober in LA, where there's probably hundreds of meetings every week, and it was really easy to find your crowd where you felt comfortable. You know, you could go to like the soccer moms meeting, or you could go to the bikers meeting, or you could go to the basically the comedy meeting, or
Whoa.
you'd see famous people. It was just it was I think it was an easy place. Well, easy. It was a good place to get sober because you could really find a good place to fit. And I was also 32 when I got sober. Christina was very young, and to her credit, she was very, very active in 12-step. And by the way, which is why I'll avoid saying names, but this is, I'm not a spokesperson for any group. I'm not an expert on 12-step. It's just my experience. Anyway, but she had some very she was much younger than I was when she got sober, and had a very different experience. I don't think as positive, definitely not as positive as mine. But we both came to Sanctuary with that history of recovery, and my horrible, I'll say challenging experience in Jamaica over that sobriety thing. It really, as I said, it really made me rethink what it meant to be sober. Whether or not I needed to worry about what other people were doing at the same time. With the answer's no, by the way. But because it was so difficult for me, that I've never been comfortable. None of these experiences, I've never been comfortable with the feeling of the altered feeling. I don't like it. I still don't like it. I'm getting more comfortable with it. But to me, it's sort of I don't know. It's just the price. It's the price I pay for the benefits, which are many. After this last experience, I just felt like a different person. The anxiety, I believe it's something I need to do probably at least once a year to keep myself like spiritually, mentally healthy. Anyway. But it had been so traumatic for me, like the idea, at least at that time, how do I do this? How do I, as a sober person who, under the common, practices of people in 12-step would not be, you would not be considered sober anymore if you were, if you smoked that joint, even, for nausea when you could take Pepto-Bismol, or, some people even early days had a problem with the antidepressants I took. I would never go into a meeting and say, hey, by the way, I just, took 3 grams of psilocybin. And it, even though I know that, I believe that there's not a conflict between those two things. My conclusion was that, eventually, whether or not I'm sober, or clean, I'm okay with these things. As long as I'm not drinking, I'm okay with the psilocybin. So, but it was such a traumatic experience for me, and I felt like I was kind of dealing with it alone. And then I started meeting people in Sanctuary who had also a history of recovery, and were obviously had believed that there were spiritual, other benefits to taking psilocybin. And so just in order, and Christine and I had talked about this, but just, my germ of an idea, which was all it was to have a place for people who might be struggling with that, people who had a history of addiction, or, and yet, and recovery, and might be conflicted about microdosing or taking, any amount of psilocybin, which I believe, can be so helpful to people for a variety of reasons. So I wanted anyone who was really struggling with that to be able to have a place to go and talk about it. And so I talked to Christina about it, and we decided to start a Zoom, it's a bi-weekly, every other week, Zoom meeting called Psilocybin and Sobriety, in quotations, which was Christina's idea. And it's been very educational for me. Because, as I said, what I envisioned was just people who were, again, struggling with taking the psilocybin. But what we've ended up with, and all the, whatever else has happened or will happen with it, Christina gets all the credit. She's like the brain. I say she's the brains of this outfit. She's amazing, and I think her time in leadership roles in 12-step really helped her with this. But we've got I say it's like sobriety, advanced sobriety, because it, God love 12-step. It's a great thing that works for, I think, the most people, to keep the most people sober for the longest period of time. But it's not the only way. I mean, if you're someone who, had a problem with alcohol, but, can recreationally use marijuana, on the weekends without a problem, doesn't interfere with your life, it's no damaging behavior, then, is it really necessary for you to not have it, to exclude that from your life? Or if you're an overeater or a sex addict, then what does alcohol and, recreational, what is, so there are just shades of what, people are making different choices rather than, one size fits all. I think some of the people in our group so far, I'm becoming aware of the fact that people are making even more, what I want to say, like, there's just a variety of choices that people are making that work for them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the whole thing's going to fall apart. You know what I mean?
That seems like a pretty significant ontological shift for you.
Oh, yeah.
Like you, from what I recall, you were pretty staunch, like sober is sober. And that was a lot of the conflict you were having, as you're saying, with psilocybin.
Yeah.
And so did this shift, has this really come just through these conversations that you all are having? Or was it started before that, maybe? Or?
I mean, I think it started after that experience in Jamaica, but it's definitely happening more now. I mean, previously, I think I felt sober is sober, but medicine, that was one of the messages I got during that private sacrament at my house was medicine doesn't always look the way you think it should. That doesn't mean it's not good medicine. And what it made me think of was my husband's radiation, because he lost a lot of weight. He ended up with a pulmonary embolism. It wasn't pretty. He got confused. But having said that, the radiation killed his cancer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, my belief was like, I didn't feel bad about taking 2 hits off a joint if I thought I was going to throw up. But I also always believed that was a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that sobriety or abstinence works best when you sort of remove, you don't put the camel's nose in the tent. You don't let the camel put his nose in the tent, because what happens is the camel, and next thing you know, the whole camel's in the tent, right? So that was how I felt about it. And there's a reason why, because that happens, especially people that are newly clean and sober. You know, you don't tell the newcomer to just, if you feel like having a beer, have a near beer, because it's only...
And psychedelics can also be an entry point for people into relapse, right? I've seen it, particularly LSD. I've seen it with cannabis for sure.
Really?
Oh yeah. So, the medicines have a role to play for sure, but it sounds like the context of community, the container of community, and being able to have these conversations. Because I can imagine, like, folks that I've seen relapse after using psychedelics or cannabis, they didn't have anyone that they could talk to about their usage in a kind of a thoughtful way, right?
Yeah.
And so to be able to have a conversation where you can share your experience with this substance that produced an altered state and not necessarily feel guilty or shameful about it, because shame and guilt just shove us right back into the self-destructive behavior.
That really surprises me about psychedelics, because I would have thought, that if anything, psychedelics would remove the desire for, other, like, excessive use of other mind-altering substances. There's the famous, use of, was it LSD? Bill W. found one of the co-founders of AA being treated with LSD in a Canadian hospital for depression or something, and reportedly this is where he had a revelation about the higher power and the spiritual, aspects of AA. I know, like, numerous cases of people having, like, being able, who previously unable to quit drinking, spiritual experiences, that they had on psilocybin or whatever. And then, I had a weird experience with this it was, like I said, smallish dose. I had been drinking energy drinks probably on a daily basis, because I work a lot and I'm always tired, and I would just on a daily basis pretty much have an energy drink. Since that experience, I don't want it, and that's what I'm talking about, the shedding or the unlearning maybe of bad behaviors or unhealthy behaviors, but the marijuana doesn't surprise me so much, but the psychedelics it does. But if that's the case, and I'm sure you're right, then this would be the answer, to have the community.
Well, and it's much more so the case that people end or step away from bad behavior, but it is very much a possibility. I can think of one person right now I know who was in recovery and is back using LSD regularly alongside very harmful drugs, right?
Huh.
So the substances themselves are very powerful, but not nearly as powerful as they can be within that container of conscientious community, intentionality.
Yeah.
There's a lot more factors involved than just the medicine.
Because we can use, like you say, it's the rarity for sure. Unlike alcohol, which it's the rarity that somebody can really, like, manage that relationship well.
Exactly.
So it's on the opposite side of the spectrum as certainly being an outlier of an experience, but it happens. But like anything can be a coping mechanism, which is not actually, an integrated, healthy way to deal with something when you're coping with something, externally from you. So really, I feel like anything can be subject to.
That's true.
To that.
I can't imagine, like, I think the last thing I want to do after an experience like with a psilocybin sacrament is have a drink. It's more like, just bad day where everything went wrong or whatever. That's when I might occasionally think like, boy, like this would be, if I were drinking, this would be the time I'd have
after the retreats in Jamaica, that's pretty much the first thing I'd do was get drunk, because there was just overwhelmed from all of the energy and the people and the secondary trauma. And no matter if I took mushrooms or not, like, I would drink to try to bring my nervous system down to a certain level. So mushrooms for me have not been helpful in terms of reducing my consumption of alcohol. LSD, I don't even have to think about it. If I take a dose of LSD, it can be a playful dose that's not really, setting. It's just kind of whatever. We're out in the park or we're walking to the forest or whatever it looks like. But for some reason, I notice with when I take LSD, I will have 6 months or so where I just don't even care. I look at alcohol, I'm like, yeah, no, that looks horrible. And there's no intention going into it.
Yeah.
That's the outcome for me. So I think everybody's going to find themselves working with different substances in a different way and having different outcomes. And so having that open mind and really just seeing what works for you is really important. And that's where it does seem like there is some detriment to kind of your typical 12-step problems that want to prevent any type of exploration of any other substances that might provide some form of relief and behavioral redirection, etc.
I mean, it's fascinating to me, and trying to be open and not judgmental. Like when I'm hearing people talk about what they're going through. I mean, typical in a 12-step meeting, and I can't remember where this appears. Like Christina would know in the traditions, maybe when you talk about, when someone speaks, they talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So what happened to make them reconsider, or their choices around drinking, and what it's like now that they've quit. And the format that Christine has come up which I think is really genius. What it was like, what happened, with this, with the recovery and psilocybin, and what it's like now. What is their life like now that psilocybin has been incorporated, as a sacrament into their life, and what it's like for them now? Because these people, most of them, or certainly I can't imagine, would be openly accepted. Their behavior would be openly accepted in 12-step. I believe I've heard people say that their sponsors know about it or something like that, but it's something, again, you wouldn't, openly discuss. I mean, just like 30 years ago or 35 years ago, I wouldn't have openly told people in a meeting I was taking antidepressants, which is kind of, I knew that I didn't believe I was doing anything wrong. I thought, anybody, it made perfect sense to me. But there was enough pushback, and you don't want to hear that. Like, I mean, I don't know. It wasn't like, I didn't want to, it's not where I wanted to take a stand, at that time anyway.
Yeah. So the psilocybin and quote unquote sobriety circles that y'all are doing virtually now, and maybe in person at some point, but virtually now, which are now open to the public starting tomorrow. Are people, what if you have history in 12-step, but you've never practiced with the mushroom, like, any mushroom experience? Can people like that come into it?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's a great question. There's been some discussion about, because, as like people sort of run the whole gamut with even within the sanctuary. There are people who have maybe never dosed but are interested in it. There are people who are microdosing or have been microdosing for depression or anxiety or whatever, and want to try maybe a heroic dose, so-called heroic dose, or take sacrament in a higher dose. So yeah, there are people within those groups. There are also people who have like a history of recovery from whatever substance, and so they are. I think they've been kind of showing up to check us out and see what it's about and what. And the thing is, we'll talk about anything. So I mean, including if you're currently, I mean, I'm not really all that patient, like with people who, like when I used to go to, well, not even within meetings, but if people go, if someone in my head, if someone goes to a meeting, we don't need to talk about whether or not you have a problem with alcohol or whatever it is, because normal drinkers don't go to AA meetings. Okay. So if you're, thinking, if you're at the point where you're thinking that maybe you have a problem, trust me, you do. Because my husband, who has a beer with his pizza once a week, has never occurred to him that he's got a drinking problem, or he might need to quit drinking or cut back or whatever. You have a relationship with alcohol that doesn't work. I mean, I don't need to put labels on anybody. I'm just saying there's something going wrong there somewhere if you're thinking about going to a meeting. So we will also get people who are currently questioning their relationship with, maybe they've been told by friends or family, or they've had a bad experience, maybe a DUI or whatever, and they also use psilocybin as a sacrament or want to or whatever. So we're happy to see those people too. I don't think at this point we're there to help people get clean and sober, but to share our experiences. It's like one of my big beliefs about 12-step that I thought was, or one of the things I really believed in was that they used to talk about it as a program of attraction rather than promotion. We're not Bible thumpers. We're not like going door to door, but we are happy to show you what our lives are like now. And I think that's what we're probably, I'd have to talk to Christine about this, but I like to think that we will hopefully be focusing on some of the people who have found that are in a good place, where they have found a place where they're comfortable with their practices, whatever they might be, not drinking, or even like you said, even using something they're in a place where they're comfortable with their practices. They're not participating in any self-destructive, harmful, addictive behaviors, and at the same time, they're also part of our community, and they're incorporating the use of psilocybin as a sacrament into their lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. I think it has enormous potential. Over the years, hearing so many people lament the fact that they felt like they had to leave their 12-step community in order to pursue healing through psychedelics. It's really it's a wonderful vision to imagine a place where those people can feel at home and be able to continue on their journey in a non-judgmental, just like you're saying. That's so important for any form of recovery or healing, is that where judgment is limited, if not hopefully non-existent, which is also, I think, not typical of churches. And I'd love it if you'd kind of talk about that. I don't see you as a typical churchgoer. I don't know if you are. Have you been going to church for years? Or?
No. I mean, I grew up in Baptist church that, I kind of, I decided I didn't need to be there when the pastor started talking about like throwing all his son's rock and roll records off of a cliff or something. I don't know. I don't remember. It was like, I have attended a variety of churches and synagogues over the years, but just to sort of, I don't know if this it'll sound like a cop out to some people, but I always felt like it was okay anywhere I went to sort of take what made sense, take it away and leave the rest. So that's sort of what I did.
So what's your experience like? This is something that I want to try to communicate out to folks, and also I guess I'm trying to find my own form of reconciliation still around the fact that, we started a church. And so, I'm just kind of curious about how you perceive this community as a church, and like, just what's that feel like when you tell people? Do you tell people that you're part of a church? And when you do, like, how does that even sound in your own ears coming out of your mouth? How is it received?
And I'm also like, as you're asking that, I'm remembering when we came back to Kentucky and we just had our daughter and you came over for the first time. We were like standing up here and we're like telling you about Sanctuary and the church that we just started. And we're both kind of like it's a church, and like we're both just kind of feeling that weirdness around it being a church, and watching your responses, like just waiting for you to run out the door.
Do they mean cult?
Yeah.
What do they mean?
No, that's a really good question. I mean, it's one of those things that makes it sounds perfectly normal, and it makes perfect sense to me if I'm talking to anyone in the church. But when I tell someone, I mean, first of all, just for me to be telling anybody that I'm, that I have, taken psilocybin for these reasons, or whatever reasons, how I got on this train, that's hard. That's sometimes like challenging. There's still people in my family that, don't know. And then to add on top of that, by the way, the reason I can do this is because I'm a member of this church. I feel like I should be putting quotation marks around it, but that's so far from that's not true. It is. I feel great about it, especially since there's no belief system that is being imposed on me. I don't have to believe that, I don't have to have specific beliefs about Jesus or what happens, about who's going to hell, and that anybody who's beliefs conflict with ours, they're going to hell, or whatever happens to them. I mean, I'm in a community of people who I think we have certain some beliefs in common, that psilocybin is a spiritual sacrament, for example. But having said that, we're free to believe what we believe, and we are okay with having possibly differences in our beliefs amongst ourselves. I mean, it's just hard for me to imagine someone getting really judgmental about anything that might come up. I mean, as you well know, we have discussions, that after the first 30-minute service, we have discussions and on a variety of topics connected to our readings, and just hard for me to imagine anybody getting real judgmental about anything that might come up. So that's been beautiful. I mean, it's really what a church should be. And, ironically, really through this church, I've learned more. I think, I could be wrong, but I've learned more about what God is, why we're here, how I should live, than I did from any other church or group.
Well, it's interesting because we don't really have any specific dogma or teachings around those subjects.
No, but you gave me the opportunity to have these spiritual experiences using the sacrament that, for me anyway, have resulted in I have a whole journal of things that I look at that tell me in a way that makes a lot of sense to me, what kind of, what life is about, what the universe is about, what the nature of reality is, what love is, there's just so many things that I've learned, not from, necessarily sitting in a Zoom service, but from having those experiences in a protected, where my religious, freedom is being protected. And the community is like a side benefit to that. It gives me a place, as we said, to help me integrate and share those experiences. And it's the whole, it's the whole picture. You guys just really brought it all together really well.
Well, we did. We did because, like you were, if not the first member, you were one of, the first members of Sanctuary, and you have built this with us, maybe not directly sitting writing bylaws and stuff like we did, but your experience and having that trust, and that just that feeling, following your intuition and, going with it and participating.
Yeah, showing up.
That's everything. So
well, thanks. And if it makes you feel I feel like it's important to say that I would never follow anybody blindly. I watch, to a fault. I watch people. I watch how they treat other people. I'm always on the lookout for signs that, this is a person or an organization or whatever that I don't need in my life. And, based on what I see, then I make decisions. So that says, what that says is, at every, from Jamaica to, your living room to, the Zoom meetings to the sacraments that we've done, I haven't seen anything that made me nervous. I think it's been a process. I think it's been a relatively slow process of us personally getting to know each other, which is fine. But I haven't seen anything that makes me think I, should be moving, in another direction. So.
You were skeptical at first, though.
No, what, of the church?
Of me.
No. Yeah, there was Eric and I both
sitting there smoking weed the whole time. You're like, this guy. Something ain't right here.
Yeah,
he needs to get sober.
That's right. No, I had it
clearly fucked up.
I had it in my head, for psilocybin, for me to make that. To fly down to Jamaica, I think I had it in my head that this was medicine, which meant you were supposed to be wearing a white lab coat, and it was supposed to be more of like a clinical experience, and what I think what I saw just fed into that fear that I had in the back of my mind, and that's why it came out that no, this isn't medicine for your depression. This, and possibly a spiritual experience. This is a bunch of people getting high together. That was my big fear, and that's what sent me down that rabbit hole.
But it's really interesting to see, and where you're at right now in this kind of perspective shift that you've had around sobriety, is there was a part of me even then that was consciously trying to illustrate what you're expressing now, that sobriety, that it's not about the substance, it's about how you manage it, right? I think there is so much spiritual and therapeutic value in having fun.
Yes. Yeah, we're back to, yeah, I am trying to, I'm moving there. That was the big thing about having fun. Like I still, like that was during the camping retreat. That was one of the messages. Like, joy is not something that you have to earn. Like fun, it's not something you have to earn. It's not the reward for the task, the struggle. But yeah, we've been on that road together. I still haven't gotten to, I think, to where you think I should
I don't think you should be right where you're at. I think you should be right where you're at.
But,
Are you coming to the celebration, though? That's the next
no,
question.
you know what? The only reason I'm not is because I had already planned a trip to California with my last great niece, the youngest one, to take her to Disneyland.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we're going to be in California that week, but
Having fun.
yeah, having
Good,
fun.
good. As long as you're having
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm still trying to get there, and like in the mushroom space of being okay with, like, I think part of me still thinks that this needs to be work and study, and I'm learning here. And I think someday when I grow up, I'm going to learn how to have fun.
Well,
in the mushroom space.
there is quantified research that shows it's very clear that children, adults, animals, everybody learns more through play than through work.
Yeah.
We learn more having fun.
And that's a serious fact.
Serious. Fucking serious.
Hey, Eric has gotten so annoyed with me having fun in mushroom trips.
Really?
And a couple other people that I clearly think.
years ago, like 15 years and 435 trips ago. Yes, you're right.
You mean like 10 years ago when we met?
Oh, yeah, I guess it'd be 10
We
years.
haven't known each other 15 years, babe.
But it was at least 400 trips
I remember
ago.
him just like shaking his head, and I'm like in the field, like, woo! And he's like, she is not taking this seriously.
It's true. It's true.
That's right. Well, that's my growth has been from being annoyed and looking at all these people in Jamaica and thinking, these people are just getting high. Like, this isn't, and me grabbing you and saying, we're working here, right? And then now, like at the camping retreat, being fine with people laughing and, just good for them, good for them. So that's growth.
And
Some
good
growth.
for you. Yeah, good
Yeah.
for you. You are growing significantly. It's really wonderful to actually see it on you. I see you do. You see and you seem, you feel, you look a lot lighter, a lot more relaxed. What that comes from, I don't know. No, not sure. Pinpoint on the mushrooms. It sounds like it's a holistic process, which this all is. And we always want to help to reiterate to people that the mushrooms are not going to save you. They're just a tool for introspection to allow access into that divine self and that community. It's not going to save you either. All of these require us showing up for ourselves. And then it starts to unfold. So I commend you for continuing to show up for yourself.
Well, thanks for providing a safe space for me to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for helping make it safe
I'm
everybody.
so excited to see where this sobriety topic goes. I think it's one of the most compelling conversations to be had around psychedelics. It's also funny to me too. Probably a dozen times have heard people say and have had similar experiences. someone who is on mushrooms saying, I feel more sober than in regular life, right? And so like that potential for clarity and just for us to start developing a different framework for speaking about altered states. Like right now, we're not flat out sober. We think that we are, right? But we're always in a little bit varied of a state.
Tamped. I think it's all a little tamped down. And I mean, I do feel like right after a mushroom experience, like just like you're saying, that it's just, I feel sort of cleansed, all that, whatever that is, that like grime that's all like got me all clogged up, whatever it is, it's all been sort of flushed away. And I feel like I do see things more clearly. So,
and we consider it to be quite a milestone that Sanctuary was just invited to 2 sober festivals as an education booth for the spirituality and psilocybin. Like, I mean, I was personally shocked, like that they, wanted us to have like a center stage in those events being sober festivals. There surely wasn't education on, how to drink alcohol or how to smoke weed or whatever.
Congratulations.
Well, it had me thinking when you were talking, I was thinking, what if we treated alcohol like a sacrament? And then I realized that in the Catholic Church, wine is treated like a sacrament, and still, like Catholics, we drink to the end.
I mean, I think the big difference is, and this, one of the facilitators in Jamaica said this to me, and I think it's very true, is, some of these other substances are more of a numbing, have sort of a numbing effect, whereas the psilocybin, maybe other psychedelics have like a clarifying, like clarify things. You're not trying to suppress or numb anything down. It just really opens you up to reality.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff. Also, it strikes me too, just kind of the last thing, I just wanted to make a note of how interesting, and I as well don't ascribe to coincidences. Like there is intelligent design behind everything that's happening. And that Stephen was one of the folks that sat with you, who was also, came to Jamaica on a separate retreat,
right,
and then subsequently moved to Louisville here. It's really interesting, this kind of little circle of familiarity. It feels, there are times when I feel like we are some kind of like space family or something. Like there's a connection underlying our relationship that is much deeper than we can perceive of.
Right.
It's just really, really interesting to observe that.
I'm with you there.
Well, it's more interesting to me that I believe that not only Steve and his wife, but there have been other members of the church that have moved here deliberately to be close to the church. I mean, I came to Louisville because my husband's family lived here. But that speaks to, I mean, these people, picking up and moving here to be a bigger part, be able to have more access to Sanctuary or have a bigger part in Sanctuary, that speaks volumes about the church, I think. So again, something to be excited about.
Well, we threatened them and said that we would kick them out if they didn't move here. So they did, out of
It would be a
fear.
proper cult if we didn't threaten their lives.
That's right.
No,
just kidding.
There's going to be, as Courtney was alluding to early on in this, we're going to see these communities forming around the country, which all of it is just so exciting. Seeing this kind of rising tide that's lifting all of these ships. Christine out in Tacoma doing work out there and building community, and we've got folks in Maine starting to build, in Texas and Florida. I think probably before we know it, we're going to turn around and see more communities carrying the same model forward around the country, which is really beautiful.
Our community growing, right? What we have over
150 something here in Louisville alone.
Well, yeah, and even at the last Zoom. Last Zoom service, there were well over 100 people.
Yeah, we actually had 140 people throughout, like logging in and logging.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So it's the biggest yet, I do believe.
It's pretty exciting.
It is.
So
Well,
we'll see where
thank
it
you
goes.
for sharing your story with everyone. I mean, I know you said before you got on, like so many people do, you know, people really want to listen to me, like share my story. But yeah, I mean, the number of people that feel like they cannot at all talk about their journey or interest in working with mushrooms because of,
Right.
you know, their journey with recovery.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, just planting that seed, helping people feel like they're not the
Right.
only ones, they're in
Well,
good company.
let me just mention real briefly, as you know, like, I went to speak at the Moth. It's just an open
yeah.
stage,
Oh, yeah.
right, Louisville, and spoke about my experience. I had 5 minutes to tell my story about being sober and then taking psilocybin, and I had 2 people come up to me after to ask me about Sanctuary, and I believe one of them ended up joining.
I think 2 people joined.
Really?
I remember two discovery calls where somebody said it was from you in the Moth
so
story hour.
the need is out there. The
Yeah.
people that are, you know, in that, you know, have that history or whatever. So we'll hopefully we can provide a place for them to talk about their concerns and you know, incorporate that all into the community.
Yeah.
For sure. So first of all, I want to encourage our listeners, if you haven't, go back and listen to that first episode with Honor so you can kind of get a bigger picture of this ongoing journey. It's really beautiful to see the unfolding, how these experiences impact our lives for years and years and years. I don't remember what you said then that psilocybin says to you, but I'm wondering, does psilocybin say anything different to you that you know of? Where are you at in that?
I had no answer the first time. I remember just feeling like so uncomfortable because I didn't have anything on the tip of my tongue. But I mean, I was looking at my journal just now, and something I didn't remember from one of my mushroom experiences was that, you know, we choose everything. And so I'll say psilocybin says choose joy.
I love it.
Yeah. And it's not for pussies.
It's
Most importantly,
oh my
that.
God.
Next time you come on, Psilocybin Says, we're going to make a shirt and you have to wear it the whole time. That says that.
Maybe that should be the thumbnail for the YouTube video.
Yeah. We might get blocked from
Yeah,
YouTube
the
if we
shadow
make
ban
it that.
there.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Honor.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.